Here it is, my dears, the lost poem, the missing poem of Sir John Betjeman's that I wanted you to have. It's really odd, because it really is the lost poem. I couldn't find it anywhere as I went through countless online sites which claimed to be giving you the best of Sir John Betjeman's poems, or all Sir John Betjeman's, and this wasn't there. And the odd thing for me personally is that it's called Cottage Hospital. An interesting phrase. It held me fascinated when I first heard it. Cottage Hospital. Hospital for me suggests a great big place humming with distant engines and boiler rooms, and cottage is a quiet place that only a couple of people inhabit. A cottage hospital. And out of that came my first full-length play, which was called In a Cottage Hospital. And I previously had, actually, was it my first? My first? No. I think I had already had a full-length play performed professionally, and this was my second, but it was the one that counted. It was performed up in Edinburgh at the Travers Theatre, the original Travers. There had been at least 3 under that name, and this was a tiny, tiny place. It was actually a corridor of Edinburgh's famous Royal Mile, and there a play of mine called 26 Efforts at Pornography, that was the title, had been performed before it was performed at the Royal National Theatre. It was only the National Theatre then, down in England, having struck a chord. And this play, In a Cottage Hospital, was first performed in Edinburgh at the Travers, and then it opened a new theatre in Manchester, and in many ways it launched me. And it's about a man who's been in a car accident and seems to have lost some part of his memory and refuses to go home until his memory is restored to him, and people try and explain to him that his memory may not have been perfect in the first place. However, they can't get him out, and that's what's happening in the play In a Cottage Hospital. And this is where, in Betjeman's mind, and I very much doubt if I'd read the poem when I wrote my play, in Betjeman's mind, that's where he ends up. It's the kind of place where you might end up, in a genteel kind of nursing home, tiny, expensive, private, genteel nursing home in what the British call the home counties in the south of England. The home counties being a sort of pseudonym for white supremacist counties, for the rich and the white and the northern hordes who speak in a funny accent are not part of the home counties. Such is the structure of snobbery and classism in the United Kingdom. So a cottage hospital was indeed somewhere where, if you were Sir John Betjeman, you might have imagined yourself ending up. And what he pictures is this: at the end of a long-walled garden in a red provincial town, a brick path led to a mulberry scanty grass at its feet. No, a brick path led to a mulberry, meaning mulberry tree, scanty grass at its feet. If you've never come across a mulberry tree, oh, I know what you can do. You can go in Brooklyn to the southern part of Prospect Park, along the road there. There's mulberry after mulberry at the right time of year. You can pick tens of thousands of mulberries, and delicious they are. So, at the end of a long-walled garden in a red provincial town, a brick path led to a mulberry, scanty grass at its feet. I lay under blackening branches where the mulberry leaves hung down, sheltering ruby fruit globes from a Sunday tea-time heat. Apple and plum espaliers, that's when fruit trees are, stretched out the central trunk, as it were, runs vertically up a wall, and the branches are all strapped to the wall, one above the other, on either side of the central piece of the plant. The air was swimming with insects, and children played in the street. Out of this bright intentness into the mulberry shade, Musca domestica, housefly, swung from the August light, slap into slithery rigging by the waiting spider maid, which spun the lithe elastic till the fly was shrouded tight. Down came the hairy talons and horrible poison blade, and none of the garden noticed that fizzing, hopeless fight. As you read that, you think, oh my God, is that us? Is that me captured at last by death? Say, in what cottage hospital, whose pale green walls resound with the tap upon polished parquet floor of inflexible nurses' feet, shall I myself be lying when they range the screens around, as they do here in America and everywhere, when a patient is dying? And say, shall I groan in dying as I twist the sweaty sheet, or gasp for breath uncrying as I feel my senses drowned, while the air is swimming with insects and children play in the street? A terrible, cruel vision of how we might end, and it's an interesting counterpart to Sir John's witty and delightful poems. The great mass of his poetry is his return fairly regularly to facing up to the horror the dying might have in store for us. And his courage in writing so lucidly about what dying may bring is perhaps its own comfort, perhaps terrifying. Perhaps you don't want to hear about this. But it is a possibility that all of us face. We might not simply fall under the proverbial bus. At least to me it's proverbial. You fell under a bus. We might not die in our sleep, as everyone devoutly wishes. There's no knowing. It might be much as Betjeman describes, I'm afraid. And as I say, I feel it's an act of courage on his own behalf and on behalf of all of us, that he describes it, faces it down, and faces it honestly. So that, I'm afraid, is the rather brief treat I was going to say. I'm not sure that it is. It's the addition to the other poems that I promised you. And it's the other part of Betjeman's contribution to poetry and to us is that death is his companion, is always present. And we may take a walk with Sir John and with death, thanks to this poem. I hope this video finds you in sufficiently cheerful form that you can incorporate this aspect of Betjeman's poetic gift and poetic preoccupations without it ruining your day. All the best.